The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop, throwing Emmeline Hart against the wooden frame hard enough to bruise. Through the dusty window, she watched the driver unhitch the horses with practiced urgency, his weathered face tight with concern. The wheel had cracked clean through, split like kindling on the unforgiving Montana terrain. "End of the line, miss," he called up, not unkindly. "Town's 15 miles east. I'll send help back when I reach it, but that won't be till nightfall." He glanced at the dying sun, already bleeding red across the horizon. "You'd best find shelter. There's a ranch about 3 miles north. Follow the creek bed." Emmeline's fingers found the golden locket at her throat, the last remnant of her mother's love, the final thing she owned that held any value. She'd already sold her wedding ring, that circlet of lies her father had forced onto her finger 3 months ago, binding her to a man whose cruelty left bruises in places her high-neck dresses could hide. She'd run the night he'd raised his hand to strike her face, finally crossing a line even she couldn't forgive. The ring had bought her passage this far. The locket would have to buy her survival now. Her legs trembled as she climbed down, the prairie grass whispering secrets around her ankles. The driver was already disappearing into the distance, leaving her alone with the vastness of the Montana wilderness. She'd never felt so small, so utterly insignificant beneath the endless dome of sky. Her stomach cramped with hunger. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and her lips were cracked from thirst. The creek was easy enough to find, a silver ribbon cutting through the golden grass. She followed it north as the sun sank lower, painting the world in shades of amber and shadow. Her city boots, once fine leather, now pinched with every step. Blisters had formed and burst and formed again during her desperate flight from Wyoming. Each step sent sharp pain radiating up her calves, but she pushed forward. Behind her lay a man who'd vowed to drag her back by her hair. Ahead lay only uncertainty. But uncertainty was better than certainty of suffering. The ranch house appeared as the last light faded, a sturdy silhouette against the darkening sky. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the warm glow of lamplight spilled from the windows. The barn stood solid and red beside it, and she could hear cattle lowing in the distance. Everything spoke of permanence, of roots driven deep into this wild land. Everything she'd never known. Before she could reach the porch, the door swung open. A man filled the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, backlit by the fire within. He descended the steps with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in his own skin. And as he moved closer, the dying light revealed his features. He was perhaps 32, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes the color of aged whiskey. A scar traced a path from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, and his hands, she noticed, bore the calluses of honest work. "You're hurt," he said, his voice a low rumble that somehow made her feel safer and more exposed all at once. His gaze had gone to her split lip, a parting gift from her husband that she'd nearly forgotten about. Emmeline's voice caught. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. "My stagecoach broke down. The driver said there was a ranch." She fumbled for the locket, her fingers clumsy with exhaustion. "I can pay. This is real gold. It's worth—" "Stop." The single word, firm but not harsh, froze her hands. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell leather and sage, and something indefinably masculine. "Gold isn't what we need here." His eyes held hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths. Recognition, perhaps, of a kindred brokenness. You are. Before we continue with Emmeline's story, I'd love to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying this tale, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to keep bringing you quality stories like this one. Your support helps us continue creating these journeys into the Wild West. Now, let's get back to Emmeline and discover what happens next. The words made no sense, yet they unlocked something inside her chest, something that had been clenched tight as a fist. For so long, she'd forgotten it could open. She swayed, and his hand shot out to steady her elbow, the touch careful, asking permission. When did you last eat? Yesterday. Morning. The admission came out small, ashamed. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the tanned skin. Come inside. We'll get food in you first, then we'll talk. We? Emmeline glanced past him toward the house. My sister, Grace, and her boy. My foreman, Thomas. Good people, all of them. He seemed to understand her hesitation, the way she'd pulled back slightly. You're safe here. I give you my word, and I don't give that lightly. She believed him. God help her. She believed a complete stranger because the alternative was collapsing in the prairie grass and never getting up again. The ranch house was simple but warm, with rough-hewn timber walls and furniture built to last generations. A woman in her late 20s looked up from the stove, her face open and kind, a small boy clinging to her skirts. An older man with gray streaking his temples sat at the table, mending a bridle with patient hands. Lord have mercy, Grace breathed, taking in Emmeline's appearance. She set down her spoon and hurried over. Thomas, fetch clean water and bandages. Cole, help her to the chair, carefully. Cole, so that was his name. It fit him somehow. Solid and unpretentious. The next hour passed in a blur of warm bread, venison stew, and gentle hands cleaning the dirt from her face. Grace asked no questions, merely hummed softly as she tended Emmeline's blistered feet and wrapped them in clean cloth. Thomas brought her boots to work on, promising he'd have them sorted by morning. The boy, Daniel, offered her his wooden horse to hold, as if lending her his most prized possession might heal whatever hurt she carried. Cole watched from his position by the fire, his amber eyes tracking her every movement with an intensity that should have frightened her, but didn't. When she finally set down her third cup of water, he spoke. You running from something or toward something? Emmeline met his gaze. Does it matter? Might, if whatever you're running from is going to come looking. She thought of Victor, of his cold fury when he found her gone, of his family's influence that stretched across 2 territories. He might come, she whispered. My husband, though I don't consider him that anymore. I left. He hit you? It wasn't a question. Cole's voice had gone quiet, dangerous. Among other things. Then he's not welcome on this land. The certainty in his tone made something flutter in her chest. You can stay long as you need. Work the kitchen with Grace, if you're willing. We don't take charity, and I don't imagine you want to feel beholden. Fair wage for fair work. Why? The question burst from her. You don't know me. I could be a thief, a liar. Are you? No? Then that's settled. He pushed off from the mantel, unfolding to his full height. I know something about running, about needing a place to catch your breath and remember who you are beneath all the hurt. Someone gave me that once. Seems right to pass it along. Grace touched Emmeline's shoulder gently. The room upstairs on the left is made up. It was our mother's, locks on the inside, and Cole's room is all the way on the other end. You'll have privacy. That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Emmeline pressed her face into the pillow and wept. Not from fear, though plenty of that remained. Not from pain, though her body ached with it. She cried because a stranger had seen her at her worst and offered dignity instead of pity, shelter instead of judgment. She cried because for the first time since her father had announced her engagement, she felt like a person instead of property. And in the room, at the far end of the hall, Cole stood at his window, staring out at the star-scattered darkness. He'd promised himself, after losing Sarah to childbed fever 3 years ago, that he'd never let another woman into his heart. The risk of that kind of pain again was too great. But something about the haunted courage in Emmeline's blue eyes had cracked the walls he'd built. He pressed his palm against the window frame, feeling the cool glass against his skin, and wondered if maybe healing worked both ways. The rooster's crow pulled Emmeline from the first dreamless sleep she'd had in months. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and for a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory flooded back. The broken stagecoach, the long walk, Cole's amber eyes promising safety. She dressed quickly in her travel-stained clothes and made her way downstairs. Grace was already at the stove, and the smell of coffee and frying bacon made Emmeline's mouth water. "Morning," Grace said cheerfully. "You look more rested. Coffee's on the table, help yourself. The men eat early. They're already out checking the herd, but they'll be back for lunch around noon." Emmeline poured herself coffee and took a tentative sip. It was strong enough to strip paint, but she'd never tasted anything better. "What can I do to help?" Grace smiled. "You don't waste time, do you? I like that. Can you knead bread?" They fell into an easy rhythm, Grace directing while Emmeline worked. Her hands, soft from years of enforced idleness as a society wife, began to remember older skills from childhood, before her mother died and her father grew bitter. There was something meditative about the push and fold of dough, the way flour dusted her fingers, the simple satisfaction of creating something nourishing. "Cole doesn't talk much about Sarah," Grace said quietly as they set the loaves to rise. "But I think you should know. She was his whole world, and when she died, he blamed himself. Said he should have gotten the doctor faster, should have known something was wrong. He's been half alive since then, going through the motions, but not really living." "Why are you telling me this?" Grace fixed her with a knowing look. "Because last night at dinner, I saw him really look at someone for the first time in 3 years. And this morning, he put on his good shirt. That man hasn't cared what he wore since we buried Sarah." Emmeline's cheeks warmed. "It's not like that. He's just being kind. Cole Montgomery is many things, but randomly kind to strange women isn't one of them. He's courteous, sure, but what he did last night, that was different." Grace squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying you need to do anything about it. Lord knows you've got your own healing to do. Just don't discount it. If something grows between you, you both deserve a second chance." When the men returned at noon, dusty and tired, Cole's eyes found Emmeline first. She was setting plates on the table, her hair caught up in a loose bun that left tendrils curling around her face. Something in his chest tightened at the sight of her moving confidently through his home, looking less like a frightened rabbit and more like she belonged. "Miss Hart," he greeted, hanging his hat by the door. "You settling in all right?" "Please, call me Emmeline, or Em. And yes, thank you, your sister's been teaching me." Thomas, weathered and wise-eyed, nodded to her respectfully as he took his seat. Young Daniel launched into an enthusiastic story about a calf they'd found wandering. The meal passed with the comfortable chaos of a working household, and Emmeline felt something in her relax that she hadn't even realized was tense. After lunch, Cole lingered as the others dispersed back to their tasks. "You ride?" Emmeline shook her head. "City girl. I've been on a horse maybe twice in my life, both times on a gentle mare at a walk. Need to change that if you're staying in Montana. Can't get far without riding." He paused. "I could teach you, if you want, after chores, when the day cools down." The offer was casual, but his eyes were intent. Emmeline found herself nodding before she'd fully thought it through. "I'd like that." That evening, Cole led a patient bay mare named Cinnamon into the corral. Emmeline approached hesitantly, and the horse snuffled at her palm, whiskers tickling her skin. "She's gentle," Cole said, his voice low and soothing. "Raised her from a foal. First thing you need to learn is how to read a horse. They're honest creatures. They'll tell you exactly what they're feeling if you know how to listen." He guided her through the basics: how to approach, how to run her hand along the mare's neck, where to place her weight. When it came time to mount, Emmeline's nervousness spiked. The ground suddenly seemed very far away. "I've got you," Cole murmured, his hands steady on her waist. "Step in the stirrup. That's it. Now swing your leg over. I won't let you fall." His touch was impersonal, professional, but Emmeline's heart hammered anyway. She wasn't afraid of the horse. She was afraid of how safe she felt with Cole's hands supporting her. How easy it would be to lean into that strength and forget that men could be cruel. But Cole wasn't Victor. Victor had taken without asking, demanded without earning. Cole asked permission with every gesture, gave her space to breathe, treated her like she was made of strength rather than china. She settled into the saddle, and Cole kept one hand on the reins, leading Cinnamon in a slow walk around the corral. The motion was awkward at first, but gradually Emmeline found the rhythm, her body learning to move with the horse rather than against it. "That's it," Cole encouraged. "You're a natural." "I don't feel like a natural. I feel like I'm going to slide right off." "You won't. Your body knows what to do. You just have to trust it." He glanced up at her, and their eyes met. The sunset painted everything gold, turning his hair bronze and catching in the amber of his eyes. Sometimes the hardest part is just trusting yourself. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning that had nothing to do with horses. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Emmeline rose with the sun and worked alongside Grace, learning to churn butter, preserve vegetables, and cook meals for hungry ranch hands. Her hands grew stronger, her movements more confident. In the evenings, Cole taught her to ride, each lesson bringing her a little more independence, a little more certainty that she could survive in this harsh, beautiful land. But they were dancing around something neither was ready to name. Cole maintained a careful distance, never touching her beyond what the lessons required. Yet Emmeline caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded, something raw and wanting in his eyes before he'd look away. She was drawn to him in ways that terrified her. The easy strength in his movements, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to his nephew, the way his rare smiles transformed his face from handsome to devastating. More than that, she was drawn to his quiet integrity, the way he treated everyone with the same courtesy, regardless of station, how he asked her opinion on ranch matters as if her thoughts held value. One afternoon, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Cole found her in the barn, brushing down Cinnamon. The mare had become Emmeline's favorite, and the feeling was mutual. The horse nickered happily whenever Emmeline approached. "Storm's coming," Cole said, leaning against the stall door. "Big one, by the look of it. We'll need to secure everything before it hits." Emmeline nodded, running the brush along Cinnamon's flank. "Tell me what to do." They worked side by side, hauling equipment into shelter, battening down loose boards, checking that the animals were secure. The wind picked up, whipping Emmeline's hair across her face and carrying the scent of rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl that made the horses shift nervously in their stalls. "That's everything," Cole said as the first fat raindrops began to fall. "Let's get to the house." They ran across the yard, but the storm hit before they reached the porch. Rain came down in sheets, soaking them within seconds. Cole grabbed her hand and pulled her into the barn instead, and they stumbled through the doorway laughing and gasping. "So much for staying dry," Emmeline said, pushing wet hair from her eyes. Cole was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Water dripped from his hair, darkened his shirt to his skin. "Emmeline." The barn door crashed open. A man stood silhouetted against the storm, and Emmeline's blood turned to ice. "There you are, wife." Victor's voice was cultured, cold. Rain plastered his expensive suit to his frame, but he looked utterly composed despite it. "You've led me on quite a chase." Emmeline stepped backward, her body remembering fear, even as her mind screamed at her not to show it. "I'm not your wife. I left you. You're my wife until death parts us. That's what you vowed." Victor's eyes flicked to Cole with disdain. "Who's this? Your savior, or just another rube you charmed for a meal and a bed?" Cole moved, positioning himself between Emmeline and Victor with fluid economy. "You need to leave, now." Victor laughed, the sound brittle and ugly. "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with, cowboy. My father-in-law is Senator Raymond Hart. He has connections from here to Washington. You're harboring a married woman on your property. That's alienation of affection. I can bury you in lawsuits until you lose everything. Try it." Cole's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "But you'll be doing it from off my land. You've got 10 seconds before I make you leave." "I'll give you money," Victor said, shifting tactics. $10,000. That's more than this Dust Bowl will earn in 5 years. Just hand her over. She's not property." Cole took a step forward. "And your money means nothing to me." Victor's composure cracked. His hand went to his coat, and Emmeline saw the glint of metal. "Then I'll take what's mine." Cole moved faster than should have been possible for a man his size. He caught Victor's wrist before the derringer cleared his coat, twisting hard enough to send the little gun spinning across the barn floor. Victor swung with his free hand, but Cole ducked under the blow and drove his fist into Victor's ribs with controlled precision. The fight was brutal and brief. Victor had money and position, but Cole had range-hardened muscle and 3 years of grief he'd bottled up, needing an outlet. Within moments, Victor was on the ground, nose bleeding, gasping for air. "You're going to listen now," Cole said quietly, standing over him. "Emmeline stays here as long as she wants. You come back, and I won't be so gentle next time. You send the law, and I tell them about the marks on her arms, the split lip, the way she flinches when doors open too fast. You think your father-in-law's connections will protect you from that?" Victor spat blood. "She's nothing. A disobedient." Cole's boot came down on Victor's chest. Not hard enough to injure, but firm enough to silence him. She's worth 100 of you. Now get up and get gone." He hauled Victor to his feet and shoved him toward the door. Victor stumbled into the rain, turned back with murder in his eyes. But whatever he saw in Cole's expression made him reconsider. He staggered away into the storm, and Cole stood in the doorway until he was sure Victor had truly left. When he turned back, Emmeline was shaking, not from fear now, but from the sheer release of 3 months of terror finally breaking free. Cole crossed to her in 2 strides. "It's over," he said roughly. "He won't hurt you again. I promise you that." "You could have been hurt. He had a gun." "I've dealt with armed men before. I wasn't letting him touch you." His hands hovered near her shoulders, not quite touching. "Are you all right?" And there it was, the question no one had asked her in so long. Not, "Will you obey?" or "Why did you anger him?" but simply, "Are you all right?" The words that came out weren't the ones she'd planned. "You saved me from dying inside," she said, her voice breaking. "You and Grace and Thomas in this place. You saved me when I had nothing left." Cole's hands finally settled on her shoulders, warm and solid. "No," he whispered, and his eyes held hers with such intensity she couldn't look away. "You saved me by wanting me." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Emmeline could see the truth of it written in every line of his face, that she hadn't been the only broken thing that needed mending. That somehow in healing herself, she'd helped heal him too. "I do want you," she breathed. "I'm terrified of it, but I do." Cole's thumb brushed her cheek, so gentle it made her ache. "Then we'll be terrified together." He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Emmeline rose on her toes to meet him halfway. The kiss was soft, questioning, both of them tentative as new colts. His lips were warm against hers, and when he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "Go slow," she whispered. "It hurts still. Not you, never you, but the memory of—" "I know." His hands cradled her face with infinite care. "We'll go at your pace. I'll die before I hurt you, Emmeline. That's a promise." She believed him. More than that, she trusted him with her bruised heart and her uncertain future, and all the broken pieces of herself she was slowly learning to reassemble. The storm raged outside, but inside the barn, wrapped in Cole's careful embrace, Emmeline felt safer than she had in years. The weeks that followed were a gradual unfurling, like a flower learning to open again after a long frost. Cole courted her with patient determination. Small gifts of wildflowers left on her windowsill. A new pair of riding boots that actually fit. A hand-carved wooden hair comb. He taught her to shoot, his body warm behind hers as he adjusted her stance. His breath ghosting across her ear as he murmured corrections. Emmeline grew stronger, her hands calloused from work, her skin bronzed from the sun, her body lean and capable. She learned to read the sky for weather, to gentle a skittish horse, to bake bread that Grace declared was better than her own. She laughed more. The haunted look faded from her eyes, replaced by something brighter, fiercer. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Cole reached for her hand. She laced her fingers through his without hesitation. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "about Sarah." Emmeline waited, sensing he needed to speak this out loud. "I loved her, but it wasn't like this." He struggled for words. "It was comfortable, easy. We'd known each other since childhood. Everyone expected us to marry, so we did. I cared for her, would have done anything for her. But I never felt like my heart was being pulled out of my chest when she left the room. His grip tightened on Emmeline's hand. With you, I feel everything. It's terrifying and exhilarating, and I don't want it to stop. I never loved Victor, Emmeline admitted. I'm not even sure I liked him. But you, Cole, you've shown me what it means to be wanted for who I am, not what I can provide. You've never tried to make me smaller to fit into your life. You've just made space for me, as I am. As you are is perfect. He turned to face her fully, and the dying light caught in his eyes. Emmeline Hart, I know it's only been 3 months. I know you're still healing, still finding yourself, but I need you to know, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want to marry you, for real, because I want to build a life with you, because you make me believe in second chances. Tears spilled down Emmeline's cheeks, but they were good tears. I'm ready, she whispered. I thought I'd need more time, but Cole, I'm ready. I love you. I think I've loved you since you told me gold wasn't what you needed. He kissed her then, thorough and deep, and Emmeline melted into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. Soon, he promised. We'll do it right. Proper wedding. Preacher. The whole town invited. I want everyone to know you chose me. And you chose me. She smiled, the expression bright and unfettered. Together. Together, he echoed, and kissed her again. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with the aspens turned to gold, and the sky impossibly blue. The whole town turned out, ranchers and merchants, cowboys and their wives, even the stern-faced banker who'd once turned Cole down for a loan. They gathered in front of the ranch house, the prairie stretching endlessly behind them. Emmeline wore a simple dress of cream linen that Grace had helped her sew, with wildflowers woven into her hair. She'd gained weight, filled out the hollows that hunger and fear had carved into her frame. She looked radiant, alive, every inch the strong woman she'd been fighting to become. Cole stood tall, in his best shirt and vest, his dark hair combed back, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked toward him. Thomas stood as his witness, Grace as hers, and little Daniel clutched the rings with solemn importance. The preacher spoke of love and commitment, of building a life together on faith and trust. But when it came time for vows, Cole and Emmeline had written their own. Emmeline, Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I vow to protect you, but never cage you, to support you, but never diminish you, to love you in your strength and your vulnerability. You're not property, you're a person, my partner, my equal, and I promise to honor that every day for the rest of my life. Emmeline's voice was clear then strong. Cole, I vow to trust you with my heart, even when it's scary, to build a life with you, not behind you, to love you through grief and joy, through drought and plenty. You saw a woman worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. I promise to keep proving you right. When the preacher pronounced them married, the crowd erupted in cheers. Cole pulled Emmeline close and kissed her soundly, and she laughed against his mouth, her arms tight around his neck. The celebration lasted into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than Emmeline had seen in one place in her entire life. She danced with Cole, with Thomas, with every man who asked politely and whose request Cole approved with a possessive but proud smile. As the stars came out, and the party began to wind down, Cole took Emmeline's hand and led her away from the crowd, toward the creek where she'd first stumbled onto his land all those months ago. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her against his chest. Deliriously. She tilted her face up to his. "Cole Montgomery, what am I going to do with you?" "Love me," he said simply. "That's all I need." "That's easy." She stretched up to kiss him. "I already do." They stood there in the starlight. Two people who'd been broken and lost, who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of ways. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. There was always more work on a ranch, always something that needed tending. But tonight, they had this, each other, a future stretching bright before them, and the absolute certainty that they'd chosen right. 5 years later, Emmeline stood on the same porch where Cole had first offered her shelter, watching her daughter toddle after a patient barn cat. The little girl had her father's amber eyes and her mother's determination, a combination that promised interesting years ahead. Cole rode in from the north pasture, and his face lit up when he saw them. He swung down from his horse and scooped up his daughter, tossing her in the air until she shrieked with laughter. "How are my girls?" he asked, kissing the baby's nose before turning to properly greet his wife. "Thriving," Emmeline said, and it was true. The ranch had prospered under their joint management. Cole's knowledge of the land combined with Emmeline's unexpected head for numbers and organization. They'd expanded the herd, hired on 2 more hands, and built a reputation for fair dealing that stretched across 3 territories. More than that, though, they'd built a home, a real one, full of laughter and love and the occasional argument that always ended with apologies and renewed understanding. They'd weathered storms and droughts, celebrated births and mourned deaths, and through it all, they'd remained partners in every sense of the word. Cole set their daughter down and pulled Emmeline into his arms. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "More every day. Even when I tell you your bookkeeping is atrocious? Especially then." He laughed, the sound rich and free. "You keep me honest, Em." "And you keep me brave," she replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Their daughter tugged on Cole's pants leg, demanding his attention, and he hoisted her onto his shoulders with practiced ease. Emmeline watched her 2 favorite people head toward the barn, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. She'd come to Montana running from a nightmare, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a locket she'd been willing to trade for survival. She'd found something she never expected, a man who saw her as an equal, a family who loved her unconditionally, and most importantly, herself, the strong, capable woman she'd been meant to be all along. The prairie wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of wild roses and possibility. Emmeline smiled, touched the place where her mother's locket still hung at her throat. She'd never needed to sell it, after all, and went to join her family. Together they'd built something beautiful from broken pieces. Together they'd continue building it, one day at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Emmeline and Cole's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.